Russian have announced that they're going to have new fighters next year, long-range aviation. What can you tell us about that?
It's more than one fighter. Russia is preparing the serial production of S-75, known to the world today as the Checkmate. It's a single-engine light stealth fighter, although it will retain classic Russian approach in terms of the super maneuverability because it will have all aspect nozzle. Then we have there are new variants of Su-34s, and there is obviously by the end of this year, which is about 11 days, Russia will complete the first full regiment. This is 24 fighters actually of Su-75. Su-57, pardon me. So there's a lot of going on there, including the Tu-160 strategic bombers now, the updated version. It's fully digitized. That's brand new electronic warfare defense systems, and it's all glass cockpit and all that stuff, and obviously the fully computerized, fully digitized other systems. So there's a lot of going on there, in Russian aviation. So it is difficult to single out one or another. Plus, there is now official confirmation that Mikoyan Gurevich, MiG, legendary MiG-35, will be also in serial production. So there's a lot of things going on there. It's not just single fighter. And yeah, Russia is officially admitting that it works on the 6th generation fighter, and what it will be, there's a lot of speculation. Okay, so including the new version, which will whatever this MiG, they call it MiG-41, supersonic interceptor. So we'll see. I don't know much. Nobody knows much about them except for people who really work on them.
If you were to compare the military-industrial complex of Russia before the war in Ukraine started and right now, what would you say, not only for domestic use of these weapons, just for selling to the other countries? How do you see the difference?
Well, the difference is colossal, and I wrote books on that issue, that Russian weapons are created not for sale. They sell them. Russians do sell weapons, obviously, and they're second largest seller, basically, in the world of the advanced military technology. But Russian weapons are made for killing the enemy. Okay, and as such, they are deadly efficient. Not all of them, as anybody. Russians make mistakes. They produce sometimes, lame, not lame, but not effective weapons. They take them back and either improve with them or just discard the program. So, in this respect, now after special military operation, the whole world wants Russian, always popular air defense systems. They want Russian combat aviation, and you know what? A lot. Let me put it this way. And obviously, everybody's thinking now. Everybody wants the stand of weapons, something like Caliber, 3M14, which is LAM essentially, LAM, land attack missile, but it also can actually hit other targets, but primarily it's stand of cruise missile. I don't think so. Russia is going to be violating. Probably will. It was the agreement, which is really like gentleman's agreement about the non-proliferation of the cruise missiles with the ranges longer than 300 kilometers. It's non-proliferation, so to speak. It wasn't really treaty. It wasn't signed, but it was like between Russia and the United States that we're not selling weapons which are longer than 300 kilometers range. I don't think so. Russians are bound by any kind of obligations right now. So you may see, and probably we will see very soon, Russian are already offering their first generation of 3M14 caliber missile, which became legendary. And the original version of it is with a nuclear ordnance 2,500 kilometers, without nuclear ordnance something like 2,200 kilometers, because the new generation of 3M14M has a range of 4,500 kilometers. So many people would like to have their hands on the first generation of the 3M14. And of course, Russian anti-shipping missiles, Now Russia is not obliged by anything. She can sell her subsonic X, which is KH-35, Uranus, and its original range was 250 kilometers, 250 kilometers. Now the latest versions fly at around 600 kilometers. It outranges basically a harpoon by almost 2 times. And of course, Russia always sold, which is called Onyx missiles, a P-800. The export version was called Yakhant. So Russia has no obligations now not to sell, anything, longer than 300-kilometer range. Onyx flies at around 800 kilometers. Now, officially, they say 650, but yeah, there are some rumors, let's put it this way, that it flies further than that. So this is the plethora, so to speak, of weapons very many want to get their hands on.
When this war started, we didn't know anything. At least people like me didn't know anything about the military-industrial complex in Europe. Then after that, they were talking about these tanks, British tanks, German tanks. I want to know what's your take on the military-industrial of Europe. I'm not talking about the United States, just Europe alone. How capable are they? And is that possible to produce the level of ammunition that Russia is producing right now?
Absolutely not. They don't have resources for that. And secondly, if going back to the weapon systems, Europe today cannot produce, for example, true 5th-generation fighter, which would equal, in terms of capabilities, for example, Su-57. They certainly are not that great in terms of the air defense systems, which are primarily all kind of iteration. You look at those NASAMS, for example, and there are obviously other purely European French systems, for example, which are, well, decent. Yeah, it's okay. They work, sort of, unless, of course, they are met with the, some type of the firepower and standoff weaponry, such as Russian. And we already have a very good record. Just recently, last week, yet another 2 Patriot PAC-3 air defense complexes have been annihilated. And the same goes for all kinds of those Norwegian, French, and German iterations of whatever they were supplying. I mean, they are not capable to fight in the modern war, and even to create the real network and something similar what Russia has. I don't think so Europe has the capability. They can produce, piece of equipment here and there, but the only nation which is sort of self-sufficient is France, because it has its own indigenous nuclear program, its own nuclear ballistic missiles. But even just recently, again, last week, the interview with one of the guys from Armed Forces of Ukraine, WSU, and it is recorded, it is all over news agencies. He was complaining that French Caesar, self-propelled artillery piece, well, as he said, it's very good, but it's not fit for the real war. So because it's very sensitive, they are not designed to fight in the dirt and dust and snow, and rain. So there is a lot of issues with the European military-industrial complex, and considering the fact that essentially they have been denied now cheap resources, such as Russian gas, for example. And you already saw yourself basically a humiliation of German military technology, including, of course, the Leopard 2 tanks. I don't think so they will do that well the more, things proceed. And combined West, including United States, is nowhere near of having a functional and serious hypersonic weapon.
There have been enough time to evaluate these British tanks, German tanks, even American tanks. How do you see German, British, and American? In your opinion, which one performed better in this war in Ukraine?
Challengers, because they do not allow them to the front lines. Russians still managed to, blow up 3 of them. I believe one of them have been actually towed. These are lumbering, huge pieces of metal, 70 tons. They are not fit for the modern war and the European theater. Abrams have been recalled back because obviously Pentagon doesn't want to be humiliated more than they already have been humiliated. And generally speaking, when you look at the development of the tank um, tactics, if you wish, and how they used, obviously it is changing. And obviously, do not forget, most of the European tanks, be them Leopards, be them Challengers, be them Leclercs of France, they have been designed being large because it was this concept that basically you have this millions armies, with those Ruskies, with tens of thousands and tanks. So what you couldn't actually resist that. So NATO decided, okay, we go in and we do make those tanks, which is a very good, ballistic computers, thermal vision, infrared, FLIR, all kinds of stuff, So basically all optronic complex. And we have obviously the combat, helicopters. And this is just to make sure that we attack Russians from the ambushes where the size of the tank actually is not as critical, because all Western tanks are huge. They are huge. Again, as I say, Challenger, 70 tons. Abrams, 67 tons. These are huge tanks. They are easy target for even, not modern sites. But well, they miscalculated. Russia has a state-of-the-art sites, and on her primarily T-72B3 and T-90M Prorif tanks. And as a result, now how do you want to fight, tanks in the open terrain when you do not have either formidable air defense, and the European NATO doesn't have it, neither does the United States. So what are you going to do? And that's when it becomes, and you need to have the air power. But then again, that's the issue. Russians can defend their tank forces on the battlefield in those gray zones because they have not only air force, which is the most combat capable air force in the world right now, and basically placing and deploying the technology which West is not even near. If you look at it attentively at R-37 with its almost 400-kilometer range. So nothing literally gets in the way of Russian tanks. And so when you look at this, so yeah, you still can use tanks in a classic, and there were tank-on-tank clashes, and they were already recorded. Some of them, like famous Alyosha tank. It's not the only tank which did this. And when you look at that, it's just, yeah, you have to have this set of air defense and air force, which none of the NATO countries has. The United States has a very large air force, but what's good it is if it will be shut down, basically, or will not even take off from the basically airfields, which will be destroyed. So you have this kind of combination, of the shield and the sword. And of course, now you see all Russian tanks practically carrying those screens atop their turrets to prevent the attack of all kinds of the UAVs, loitering munitions. And loitering munitions, of course, are becoming very popular. Let's put it this way.
Are Ukrainian finally getting these F-16s? In your opinion, is there any serious plan to send F-16s to Ukrainians?
Well, evidently, there are reports. I cannot confirm that. And again, don't forget, I do not have any super pooper, sources in general staff. And even if I did, I wouldn't, So there is a rumor that actually last week when the two Kinzhal attacks on the airfield and what is Konstantinovskaya, whatever the was name, which hit the bunker with the NATO officers there, which was officially reported in Russian press and Russian media, and even Ukrainians confirmed that. I think so. The first F-16s have been brought there. So evidently they are not there anymore because they were destroyed. So it's like, yeah, well, they will get them F-16s. What difference does it make? That's the problem. They don't understand. You either need to have those, almost Julia Duhay, those massive alpha strikes with thousands of aircraft, going there and trying to bomb Russia, which is impossible, you know. And so, okay, they give them F-16s. Makes no difference for S-400 or S-350 or for Su-35 with the R-37 missile, or Su-57, it makes no difference whatsoever. They will always have their reliable targeting, and they will always be able to launch and shoot it down. And when you outrange your enemy more than 2 times, what are you gonna do? And you remember the thing with now, which is like sensational, which was the cooperative engagement capability of the A-50 Russian AVAX and S-400 shooting down their one of their aircraft at the range of 400 kilometers. It's like, yeah, there you go. That's the new war. It's a paradigm shift.
If you were to evaluate right now the Ukrainian army, in your opinion, in terms of ammunition, are they receiving the ammunition that they need, or they're running out of ammunition?
They are out of ammunition largely. And to give you just one example, it even went through the Washington Post, New York Times, and they interviewed one of the guys, which is in Avdiivka, whatever is left, because this cauldron is being reduced as we speak. And he said that we have 6 shells per day. Well, when Russians throw at you 100, so good luck with responding and, counter battery basically operations. So yeah, they are running out of ammunition. They run out of everything pretty much. Mr. Ben Hodges, this famous American general who never won anything in his life, as most of them didn't, and he already stated today, it's just shocking. He says, no, they need to now, draft women. So yeah, children are already being drafted. So, and what can I say? That's pretty much tells you everything you need to know about the situation at the front.
Ukraine has lost 500,000 soldiers at least. In your opinion, at the end of the day, who's responsible the most? Zelensky administration or the West that is backing Zelensky to do whatever he wants in Ukraine?
The whole thing is Western neocon design. Remarkably, I'm writing about this for a year at least. And Russians are preparing now their tribunal, Ukraine War Crimes Tribunal, which many foreign names will be named there, and some of them will be charged in absentia. West is primarily responsible for this. Obviously, they found the nation, political nation, which I already stated. And again, I wrote about it, my gosh, for, I don't know, I have books about it. Where I stated that Ukrainians formed, they coalesced as the political nation. It is an ugly nation in many respects, which is based on the hatred of everything Russian and denying humanity, basically. It is very much driven by uber nationalist and Nazi sentiment. But this was the operation of neocons. FU, EU, Victoria Nuland, that type of people, Robert Kagan, Habi, these are the people from State Department and CIA who obviously have all kinds of humanities degree and who do not understand how modern geopolitics works. And they thought that they can settle accounts with Russia, some of them driven by the hatred of Russians because they bought into this, Russiagate hoax. Much of those people sit in London. They are straight down war criminals together with Zelensky. And in fact, they are larger ones. They just found their good proxy. Now, when they understood that they miscalculated, now when they see what they did, somebody has to answer for those millions of people killed, wounded, displaced in Ukraine. And guess what? Most of those people, apart from the already well-known category of the so-called Ukrainian government and military officials who are war criminals downright, there are many war criminals are sitting in Washington now. And they have been the ones who instigated the whole thing. And yeah, that was the plan from the get-go. Now, when they miscalculated, they have to wait for the outcome of the judicial proceedings, which will happen. Most likely, there will be two of them, one in Moscow and one in Donetsk. And believe me, Russians are extremely good at documenting that. You can go to the site of the Russian Foreign Ministry and you will find there white books which completely document those activities, not only in the Ukraine, but all around the world, with killing, torturing, kidnapping, just setting false flag operations. Everything is well documented. Most importantly, for example, like those officers from NATO are in Ukraine now. Everybody knows their names, who they are, their addresses. It's all well identified. And so you have those guys in Pentagon who never won anything in their lives. They lost the wars to the guys with AK-47s and sandals, and they decided that they can do it against Russians who beat the guys for whom Pentagon is not even in the same league. They don't understand this. And then now, inevitably, some kind of the new Nuremberg process will happen. It is now preordained. It is officially confirmed through major Russian media that State Duma, Investigative Committee, and of course, judicial organizations in Russia, they're working hard, and they're defining right now, which was in the press a couple of weeks ago, the type of the judges, who will be the judges which will be carrying out those hearings, and of course charging people who will be physically brought to the courtroom and people who will be charged in absentia. So there you go. And believe me, it's not done. Many people still do not understand. It's not being done for example, charging Victoria Nuland, who is, certified war criminal. I mean, when you look at the Madeleine Albright, she is, late Madeleine Albright. That's the, devil's incarnate, basically here. Those people have their hands up to elbows, in blood. But it is done for the rest of the world to see that war crimes will be punished, and so anybody who has any brains, they already know that, what, Mr. Goebbels never killed anybody in his life. Never. He didn't command armies, he didn't command any kind of the SS units, but guess what? He knew that he will be executed. That's why they killed their own children. Guess why? Because he knew he was the instigator. He was the brain behind German National Socialism and the crimes they committed, which against humanity on unimaginable scale. Well, now we're having the situation in Ukraine, which is second largest crime against humanity, instigated by those guys with the Ivy League, degrees in political science and international relations. And as usual, they obviously miscalculated because they have been misled by the other guys with the general epaulets who themselves never won a thing in their life. They lost all their wars. They have, this, they're grabbing only for this stupid Gulf War as if some kind of achievement when they beat the, a 20-year-old boxer beat the 5-year-old kid in the sandbox. And they decided that they know the war. They don't. They never studied real history. They still believe that the United States basically defeated Hitler with, the small help from those Ruskies, So there you go. And that's the result of it. That's the final result of it. Many people come out, and including people who you invite sometimes, they have no clue about Russian history. They don't understand what Russia is. They just don't. They don't understand modern warfare. So there you go.
Putin said that Russia was the only guarantor of Ukraine's sovereignty and integrity. It reminds me of the fight between Iraq and Iran, if you remember. For 8 years, they were fighting each other. As Larry Johnson, he wrote an article on that, how U.S. military-industrial complex was feeding Iraq and Iran to fight in each other. They were sending weapons to Iran through Israel. And on the other hand, they were sending weapons to Iraq, fighting Iran. We see the same scenario repeating and repeating. Right now, two brotherly countries Ukraine and Russia are fighting each other. Do you think at the end of the day, whoever comes to power in Ukraine would have this type of understanding to go after making some sort of alliance with Russia?
First, we don't know what will be left of Ukraine. Mr. Putin just yesterday also stated that, there are some really signals which Ukraine will not like. Obviously, Russia cannot exist with this regime. And then, of course, Russia cannot exist with people, many of whom are brainwashed to the point of hating everything Russian. You go to the Lvov, Western Ukraine region, they are obsessed with, they hate Russian gods, So Russia is not going to be allied with this. What is going to happen most likely, whatever will be left of Ukraine, whatever the rump will remain of this nation, it will be totally demilitarized, totally denazified. Most likely it will have some police force. That's about it. And it will be definitely controlled from Moscow. This is already what Mr. Lavrov yesterday admitted, basically, well, not directly, but, as Mr. Putin stated, he quoted Putin that, okay, we offered once, twice. So, well, if we cannot settle it by negotiations, we will settle it by the military means. And this is exactly what is happening. Russia will not negotiate or ally. Russia will dictate the conditions of the surrender. And that's what is happening essentially now. Those people in Washington, many of them, they still do not understand. Well, some already beginning to understand what happened. So, and again, as I already stated, the run from Afghanistan will look like a stroll in the park compared to what is already happening. And what can I say? As I already stated earlier today about this situation with the tribunal will be held. And it will be held for the rest of the world to see what was committed by the combined West and Ukraine.
Putin, in his recent press conference, he repeated this denazification of Ukraine. What would be your interpretation of this word for Russian? What does it mean for Russian?
It's complete destruction of the network, so to speak, of such organization like Azov, which is not really but battalion. It's more than just even brigade, because it was actually brigade-sized thing. It is the whole network, the system of the all kinds of the ideological and political, so to speak, strong points, and which like a web around Ukraine. That will be the good start from demolishing this network, which is already happening, hunting down all those people responsible, bringing them to justice, and of course demolishing the whole idea of ideology, Banderite ideology, So, and that involves all kinds of both military and operative means, including by the such organization as FSB and other intel and internal affairs organization. And that starts, obviously, as always, with personnel. Somebody came up with this. Those people, those, Goebbelses, 2.0, they are out there. They will be hunted down and they will be brought to justice. And their ideology will be condemned on the not just political level, but, as I already stated, most importantly, on the judicial one. And that will be done in the court or tribunal for war crimes.
How much popular is the Nazi ideology in Ukraine among Ukrainian people? Do we have any information on that?
It's popular. Let's put it this way. I cannot say numbers. Nobody can believe any kind of the polls conducted by Ukrainians themselves, because many Ukrainians are indeed very scared. And even when they will be giving you some answer, they never know if it is SBU, which is basically, trying to kind of, sting you, or it could be a legitimate poll. So, but many are, it's popular. And again, do not forget, starting from Leonid Kuchma, who wrote the book, that why we're not Russian, it is all based on hatred of Russians, denying of Russians, well, not only culture, humanity, and that's this infrastructure is still in there. Mr. Zaluzhny wears the swastika, bracelet on him. So, yeah, what do you expect?
One of the newspaper in Finland was reporting that Ukrainians are hating the Ukrainian army because of this failed counteroffensive. When you look at the situation right now, you said that this ideology, Nazi ideology, was popular in Ukraine. But right now, with this failed counteroffensive, and with the current situation of the Ukrainian army and the support that they are not getting the way they have been receiving since this war started, do you think this rhetoric is going to change among the Ukrainian people?
Ukrainian people are controlled extremely well by their Ukrainian special services, SBU or GUR, Mr. Budanov's, org. They are, in a sense, very much repetition of the Nazi Germany, where Gestapo controlled pretty much all facets of life there. So it's pretty much the repetition. Do not forget, a lot of it has been actually patterned, copied from the Nazi Germany. So, and then of course we have the American input and British input and other foreign countries input into this whole situation. So of course, nobody wants to die, and people, you cannot hide those, graveyards. They grow everywhere. It's just, as I already stated, confirmed by Ukrainians yourself, 1.5 new graves. Most of them are, so that is why when Putin or Shoigu say such and such numbers, they give an extremely low end estimates, not to be accused, for example, when they say what they really know, because obviously it will be challenged, and no, they give their lower end. Even Ukrainians cannot deny. And so, yes, you cannot ignore what is happening in terms of the people maimed. There are so many people who maimed in Ukraine. And now you have 76% of the male population saying that they would rather renounce their citizenship than go to the front line. That's a Ukrainian poll. So, and you see yourself each day, we have new and new evidence of those people snatching people from the streets. They snatch them, throw them in the van, drive them to front line, give them one 2 day of training now, or whatever they give them, then pop them with the drugs and throw them into the Russian meat grinder. There, as I already stated, the chances of you being killed there are nearing pretty much 100%, so, and that's what happens.
Putin just recently said that United States achieved its goal because they could separate Europe from Russia. Do you think that with these new changes that we are witnessing in Europe, we have new leaders in Europe that are against this type of behavior, this type of policy in Ukraine? Do you think that at the end of the day, we can consider that United States totally achieved its goal?
No, it's achieved its goal largely because European Commission, which actually really runs the affairs of the European Union, which is, of course, we know the Frau von der Leyen, von der Leyen, this idiot, Andrei Michel, whatever the name of this, guy, and all kinds of the creeps there, they are running it, and they are absolutely, basically, creatures which work for the transatlantic, ideas and globalism. So in this case, well, yeah, sure, Austria. The only consistent people who have been on record are obviously Mr. Orban and Hungary, who say we don't care about any politics other than the national interest of Hungary, which is great. It doesn't mean Hungarians do not have to like Russians. Hey, if the 90% of Hungarians hate Russians, it's fine, as long as they follow the normal procedures of the mutual cooperative economic development and in other fields, of course. Sure, why not? And we know that Serbia, Austria, while Serbia is a other thing which is a very kind of different animal altogether. And then you have now Austria. Sure, what's next? Austro-Hungarian Empire, they will rebuild it. So, but the point is, other than that, the rest of the Europe is completely controlled, by the United States and by the elites, as Mr. Putin said it, gray people. Those great people look at Germany. Germany is done. I'm sorry to say that, but look at their government. And guess what? I can bet you Germans will go to polls for the whatever next elections. They will elect pretty much same people with different reshuffling. Okay, same goes for French. They elected Macron twice. They elected the other guy before him. And they will elect globalists again. This is how European public moves, even if some of them express, dissatisfaction with what happens to their countries. So there you go.
They were threatening Orban to take away Hungary's right to vote in the European Union. Do you think that the voices like Orban and Fico and these people are going to get stronger, are going to get weaker? Are they going to be able to take away Hungary's right to vote? Is that just some sort of intimidating Hungary, or is that real?
I think it could be real, really, and as much as Slovakia obviously changed its course, and we know Viktor Orban and all that. But again, as I already stated, it's European Commission. It's a bunch of bureaucrats who are on the payroll of number of whatever. Then there is obviously interest, even on the part of Slovakia or Hungary, for example, to have the access to the funds of the European Union. So it's not going to get stronger. It's probably going to get more contrast, as the opposite to what is happening. But Europeans are enslaved. It's over for Europe, and you are correct, and Putin is correct. The United States achieved its goal. They separated Europe from Russia, but that's another part which they didn't again miscalculated again. Russians are not crying about it. In fact, is when you look at the cultural values of Europe, my gosh, then I am just the only one. Majority of Russians say, Iron Curtain now. We don't want to deal with these people. We don't want to have anything in common with them. And so they're confused by their gender. They cannot define who they are, and now suddenly Russians obviously are like, they can go to hell. And this is the overwhelming majority of opinion of overwhelming majority of Russians today. Russia is already doing much better than it did in Europe. It's doing in terms of the Eurasian reorientation, and of course you have monstrously huge economies of China or India or any other. You have Indonesia. You have a lot of people to trade with, and of course people who don't care, in terms of how European Union thinks about Russia, and we already saw it.
The other thing that Putin said that I found it so amazing and so wise, he was talking about the Nord Stream pipeline, that he said most probably United States was behind the sabotage of Nord Stream pipeline, and then goes beyond that and saying that we understand the role of the US in the international order and we are willing to rebuild our relations with the United States. Do we see this type of thinking, this type of wisdom in the Western political parties? Do we have anything like that in Europe, in the United States? Is that possible, in your opinion?
Yeah, no, I don't think so. I mean, we certainly, in Europe, no. Europeans, as a cattle, will go to the polling stations when the elections come, and all this alternative for Germany grows, and all that means absolutely nothing. They will go in and vote pretty much for the same people, people who represent same ideas of the globalism. And again, many people do not want to talk about, which I speak about it constantly. And that is why, and I definitely have people, which I understand, disgruntled and, honest Europeans who say, oh, it's not true, we do not hate you. But no, that's the problem. The anti-Russian sentiment is ingrained in European psyche, and majority of Europeans, be them in France, be them in Germany, be them in the Low Countries, be them in Italy, they don't like Russians. That's the reality of it, and they cannot admit to themselves. And then suddenly Russia leaves because Russia doesn't want to have anything in common culturally, because Russia already pretty much transplanted classical West into Russia. You do not want to deal with these people. And again, listen, these are the people who each century they gather the biggest force ever combined, and then they go and attack Russia. Look at the Poles, look at Napoleon, which is essentially was what 10 different nations, they're Prussians, Poles, Italians, what have you. They go and invade Russia for whatever political reason. Now you have the Third Reich, which was, of course, again, combined force of Europe with French and Belgian, and Spanish SS divisions and all that. And they go back into Russia again and kill Russians. So Russia said, enough is enough, go screw yourself. And Russians do not believe that certainly there are some people, in Europe who are either neutral or sympathetic to Russia. But almost all, 99% of the European elite, they are Russophobic to the core. All of them, not just some kind of left or right or what have you. Yeah, and so those people will be voted into power again, unless it can happen now in the United States, which is a different animal altogether. And now suddenly you have, and you face this almost the wave of desperation in the GNC-run media, be them New York Times or whatever, and who say, well, you know what, when Trump becomes the president, they almost like already know, well, what we can see. Maybe he will not be as stupid as he was in his first term. And I spoke about this today in my video, actually, by the way. So, and he finally will get his loyalists in power instead of the neocons and, say APAC people. So there you go. We'll see. I don't know. But at least United States has this option for now. It is there. It is valid. It's by far not the best, but it is a lesser evil than, for example, Biden administration and what DNC tries to impose on the United States, thus destroying it. And the Uniparty, of course, those rhinos and all that. But Europeans don't. That's the funny part. No matter what parties get there, whatever the polling the numbers and everything, they will vote in the end for the same type of the ideas.
We talk about the European elites. We know that Russophobia is the kind of policy of neocons in the United States that goes to Europe. Olaf Scholz just recently said that the rising prices in Germany is because of Russian imperialism. These type of talks, these type of opinions are coming from the neocons in the United States.
No. That's here where it was always there. Even before neocons became a power, with Ronald Reagan basically dragging this cabal of Straussians into his first administration. This is where we got Dick Cheney's and things like that of this nature, or Paul Wolfowitz and everything. No, Europeans always have been like that. The only Europeans who have been not hateful of Russia, you know who they were? Eastern Germans in GDR, German Democratic Republic. These were real Germans who understood what happened and who basically, decent people, very many of them, decent people. But primarily through the elites in the Europe, even before neocons, they always hated Russians. They always did. Hey, look at this. Look at the situation with the Galen Org, which later became BND. German, look at Operation Paperclip. United States was saturated with former Nazis who worked on all kinds of, different levels of government, especially in the intelligence. Well, look at who Werner von Braun was. He was Obergruppenführer SS. Many people do not want to see this fact, but he was SS officer. So you think so? Those people had what? Flaming love for Russians? No, they hated them because Russians kicked their butt. And that's what you have. This permeated American political thinking, and that's how they also rewrite right this very moment as we speak. They formed US Army. Those people trained them. They embedded those ideas that Blitzkrieg was the best thing ever, despite the fact that they lost the war. but they embedded this thing. You look at actually at the CIA and people who actually like Gerhard Gehlen org, which almost started World War III in 1946 by feeding fake information to American counterparts. So yeah, when you look at this, it was always there, and these were Europeans actually who transplanted this idea, especially through the Nazi element, which defined American foreign policy and convinced Americans that they are, well, we have this Atlantic values, transatlantic values, and there you go. And so neocons came later, and they added not just anti-Soviet element, they added a visceral hatred of Russian ethnicity and Russian culture. They had Russians as such, as people. Victoria Nuland, her hobby, or any neocon in the State Department, or the only thing they sleep and dream is to kill as many Russians as possible. The more Russian children, the more Russian women or men die, the better for them. That's the modus operandi, for example, of Washington establishment. And they are totally, basically saturated with neocons. But then again, neocons also played up what was already instilled in the American elite. Russophobia, hatred of Russians as such. Anti-Sovietism and anti-communism was just barely, skin thin, and it was a very shallow type. You have obviously a number of the so-called intellectuals. William Buckley, he was a moron, actually. He was a demagogue, as most of the American graduates from the Ivy League are. But he was a demagogue which removed isolationist sentiment and turned the, Cold War and what is called American right into their visceral Russophobic people. So there you go. There's no communism in Russia. There is no, expansive, globalist ideology. But guess what? They hate Russians even more.
If you were to point the heart of this hatred, this Russophobia in Europe, that would be the UK?
No, actually, paradoxically enough, although UK plays this, especially the people, those lapdogs who think they're still great nation, they still try to play this. Great Britain. Great Britain is not great. It hasn't been in a long time, but yeah, they play the role. But let me tell you again, on the continental level, France, for example, French don't like Russians. Most of them anyway. Some of them do, but others you know. So, and they don't like Russians. Just to give you an example, even how it's a lot depends on how they view themselves. But basically, what you have, the European Union is a collection of the economic and military midgets right now. And they cannot live with this fact. Again, as I already stated, the different serious economists, not those BSs from Wall Street and from Russian economy is about 2.5 to 3.5 times larger than the economy of Germany. It dwarfs it. They cannot live with this fact. They cannot understand that. France. While France obviously among them is most technologically developed in terms of military, it's still already obsolete, pretty much what they do. And not to speak of Germany, which is now being deindustrialized like crazy. So yeah, and you have those people who hate Russians for who they are. And then, of course, yeah, they still believe Russians just leave and go to outhouses. They believe that. They really do. They believe that, Putin was on the verge of suicide, when Christine Lambrecht, the defense minister of Germany, stated, now they will know because they will not be able to shop on Champs-Élysées. I'm sure Putin was about to kill himself. That's how idiotic they are, and that's how they hate Russians. Then, of course, you transplant any of them from, dirty and smelly Paris to Moscow or St. Petersburg, they will be overwhelmed with glitz, safety, and so beauty of the places. They just cannot conceive it. It's fundamental. It's visceral. It goes to the root of the European consciousness, and Russians finally recognized it. Completely said, you know what, go screw yourself. We don't need you.
During this war, we had many military experts like Ben Hodges, like Petraeus, Yeah, like Ben Wallace, even Ben Wallace, if you remember, just 3 months ago, 4 months ago,
Mhm.
he wrote an article saying that Ukraine is winning. Let's finish the job.
Yeah, yeah.
It's so important taking these people accountable for what they're saying, because it's a nation. They were destroying a nation called Ukraine.
Well, it's as already stated, there will be tribunal, which of course will expose it. And again, it's done not so much for them. You cannot convince a psychopath or sociopath that he is a sociopath. It's like you cannot teach real military art to Mr. Petraeus or Mr. Ben Hodges. They never won anything in their life. They never commanded anything in the real combat conditions against fighting war against peer. You cannot teach them that. And again, they don't teach real military history in West Point, or they teach all these fairy tales of American mythology. You can only expose them, as I did in my before last video about Ben Hodges predictions, which are if people want to embarrass themselves and institutions they represent and represented at some point of time, which is the U.S. Army and U.S. Armed Forces, well, let them. If the Pentagon didn't have humiliation enough already from their, Iraq, Afghanistan, and now they have this situation with, and then you have this parade of clowns. They evidently do not understand even fundamentals of the modern military art and what the warfare of the 21st century is. And now they see everything they know being collapsed, what's left. Some people, you know what? I mean, those people who have honor, at least they shut up and, go into their, obscurity. No, these guys, they work for military industrial complex. They need to make money. So they will speak all kinds of trash talk, because, but then again, doing so, they do not understand that they embarrass not only themselves, they are an embarrassment to the officer rank, but they're embarrassing their U.S. Army, they're embarrassing basically U.S. Armed Forces. In the end, they are embarrassing United States itself, as if United States is not isolated enough already, and the country is on the verge of the, who knows, major economic and cultural implosion. Yet, here we are. So, but again, maybe some of them, do not forget, Ben Hodges, Breedlove, all those people, they are not active officers anymore. They are experts. They, as I already stated, they wouldn't be allowed to command a battalion in the Russian army, and they will fail at doing this. Forget about commanding army corps or army. They wouldn't know how to fight it. So, and when you look at this, it's sad. It is sad. I am being U.S. citizen. I am embarrassed. And I have my friends who say, yeah, I mean, what the hell is going on there? Are they that stupid? So yeah, that's how they are. Yeah, that's how stupid they are. That's how they have no honor or anything. They all work for military industrial corporations, and they cannot even, lose with honor, to say, yeah, we lost it, we kind of, no, they will continue to go out and, do this propaganda. That's the only thing they ever knew how to do in life.
It seems that United States and Israel are preparing to fight the Yemenis, Houthis. Do you think that United States gonna get involved in war in the Middle East?
The only way United States can get involved in the war in the Middle East, and then of course say, well, yeah, we won and let's get out of this, is by pulling yet another carrier battle group there and start those strikes on the Houthis, and thus deteriorating the regional stability even more. And then, of course, Houthis already stated that they can do it because these are American Patriot PAC-3 complexes, which do not work. They will blow the, Saudi Arabia oil fields. And United States probably doesn't want to put any boots on the ground, although people say now that they may get their, something like 10,000 Marines there. Well, good luck doing this. It's Houthis are these guys know how to fight. Okay, they're pretty darn good. So that's the only thing they have left, is to bomb them. This is what United States usually does. It bombs third world countries which do not have air defense or air forces. But you know what? If they put boots on the ground, that would be pretty bad, I think.
United States sent these cluster bombs to Ukraine. That was prohibited by many countries to use them, but United States decided to do that. And after that, they said that they are taking care of this ammunition in Ukraine, that Ukraine is using them the way that they're not harming civilians. Right now, Jake Sullivan said that with this ammunition that United States is sending to Israel, and with these weapons, they're taking care of that Israelis are not using against civilians. How they can verify that, in your opinion? Is that possible?
No, of course it's all BS. United States supports practically unequivocally the Israel and what it commits against Palestinians, which is the war crime. So, and again, there are evidently two factions sort of in Biden administration, and some of them, not because out of goodness of their hearts, many of them are genocidal maniacs, but they, because they understand that the election cycle is upon us, they need, because United States is essentially isolated in the world, and they need Israel to wind this down a little bit. It's not out of humanistic, basically instincts. No, it's just because they do not want to harm already basically, disastrous situation with Biden and Democrats. And because obviously they are becoming less and less popular, to put it mildly, in the United States. And this reflects on obviously the election into the US Congress, and of course, presidential elections, which we have in 11 ones. And there you go. So they do not want, when the election campaigns kicks in, granted Biden still will be able to perform as not to embarrass himself and the country, but I mean, they need these hostilities to wind down. They need to stop it, because obviously this will be omnipresent, front and rear in the pages. I'm surprised that actually very many major media channels, corporate media channels in the United States, are beginning to report on the atrocities. They're beginning to stay openly. That look at this, killing like the last war crime. They bulldozed the whole damn hospital with people who are still alive there. How do you call it? It's a genocide, And so, but Biden administration now has the stamp all over it as people who support that.
A reporter asked Putin, what would you say to yourself in 2000? He said, don't be naive when you're negotiating with the West. When this war ends in Ukraine, I think we are at the final stages of this war in Ukraine. And finally, we can get a negotiating table. What would be the outcome of this advice for the Putin administration?
Obviously, looks like the issue of Odessa will be resolved one way or another. Again, there are a number of ways to do it without, for example, conducting the offensive and besieging the city, especially such a beautiful city, despite the fact that they really brought it to a drab state, Ukrainians. But it's a architectural marvel. It's so much connected in the city to Russian soul. So most likely it will be just break Ukraine into some kind of confederation, with, for example, Nikolaev and Odessa being basically singled out as yet another, subjects of whatever the confederation, with such understanding that they will have normal government there, which eventually at some point of time will vote for the exiting of whatever will be left of Ukraine and join Russia through the referendum. So that will be the best way, the most economical way, but it's kind of going to be long. The rest of it, Ukraine is already pretty much demilitarized to a certain degree. The complete eradication, basically, of the armed forces of Ukraine is happening as we speak. And after that, I think so that's the only way is to leave the Kiev or whatever is around it, I don't know about Western Ukraine, because today Putin stated a very interesting thing. Today, when he was talking to Shoigu and doing some intermediate summary of the special military operation, he stated that they still want to get the Western Ukraine. Understandably, the Poles want to do it, the Hungarian interest and things. And he said, well, we're ready to discuss it, but we will not give up what is truly ours. So go decipher it yourself, And Putin is obviously very ambiguous on this issue because, and he should be. That's the way to conduct the policy. You want to keep your basically enemy, which is combined West right now, in the constantly off balance, constantly in the strategic ambiguity. And when you look at this, like, what kind of plans does he have now? We certainly know that general staff takes and foreign service, intelligence service, and everything, they actively participate in developing this plan. But I would say that Russia will indeed control government-wise whatever will be left of Ukraine with such shot into the future that most of it will join eventually after some sanitary period, if you wish, denazification and maybe bringing up a new generation. They will become part of Russia. No NATO, whatever will be left of Ukraine, I don't think so. They will now even allow it to join EU. So it's like Putin's offers. When Putin offer something, you don't take it. The next offer will be much worse. That you don't take this one, it goes on and on until it becomes to unconditional surrender. And Russia will dictate conditions on how it will all happen. And Russia has the, basically resources for doing this.
Definitely, the negotiation would be between Russia and the United States. But
yeah, that's the only. Yep, that's the only two powers which really matter.
How about the guarantors? Do you think that the guarantors? I don't think that Europeans are.
No, Europeans are nobodies. They don't have historical and international relations subjectivity. So guarantors will be Russia. Russia will guarantee Ukraine what needs to be guaranteed after it will clean up, and basically mop up the whole mess which Nazis and combined West made out of it. And after that, as already stated.